over 20 countries and regional alliances are participating in SIACA. This REDiCAP for today focuses on Northeast and Southeast Asia and is supported by RCC in Asia Pacific and as well as MENA and South Asia. In this region, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Mongolia, Laos, and Papua New Guinea, as well as ASEAN, have engaged as SIACA partner countries. Rather than providing one-off support, SIACA offers a phased and tailored assistance to enable partner countries to strategically design and implement carbon pricing. For the sake of time, I will not walk you through all the details, but as you can see, we have sort of the stepwise approach to support developing countries to consider or adopt the carbon pricing instrument. So in the case of Panama, and I'm seeing our colleagues from Latin American region, we have the multi-year support, and I hope that some of you will also can be joined as our new SIACA partner countries. This slide highlights the 2024 to 2025 SIACA country support activities implemented in Northeast and Southeast Asia. In Mongolia, SIACA is supporting the development of a national forest carbon market project. In Laos, the A study is being conducted to evaluate the modalities, opportunities, and risks of introducing fees or levies on ITMOs. Papua New Guinea is a new SIACA partner country this year, where feasibility assessment of carbon pricing instruments is currently underway. In Bhutan, I'm looking at the participants from Bhutan. SIACA supported the development of Article 6 positive list, which was subsequently published by the government last year. It was very honored from our study even. In Sri Lanka, also looking at our distinguished participants from Sri Lanka, SIACA supported the foundational study and policy recommendations on a carbon trading policy framework and guiding principles. REDiCAP, which you are participating in today, is also one of the key pillars of SIACA. Each year, REDiCAP serves as a platform for continuous regional engagement, bringing together not only government officials, but also a broad range of stakeholders. Last year, REDiCAP was held across 5 regions, along with the one thematic session, bringing together 153 participants, representing 75 countries. Discussions focused on experiences and challenges related to carbon pricing instrument and participation on the Article 6, fostering active peer-to-peer exchange. As this is the first REDiCAP of the year, it is particularly meaningful to kick off the 2026 SIACA cycle together with you. If you'd like to learn more about SIACA, I encourage you to visit our webpage, where you can find detailed information on the initiative, including the country-specific studies I mentioned earlier. You may also wish to reach out to Julie on your back, of our regional lead for RCC Asia and the Pacific, and Uma in the front, our Article 6 and the carbon pricing expert from the RCC MENA and South Asia, who are with you on site for the information on SIACA support opportunities. Now, to set the scene, let me briefly explain why carbon pricing is at the center of today's discussion and its broader context. Let me briefly walk you through what we mean by carbon pricing. At its core, carbon pricing is about putting a price on carbon on greenhouse gas emissions. In doing so, it helps internalize what we call the externality, specifically negative externality of carbon pollution. In other words, making the cost of emissions visible in economic decision making. This creates a price signal as we put a price on carbon, such as the X dollars per ton, typically expressed, which can influence both production and consumption choices. So why do we put in place. Carbon pricing helps ensure that cost of carbon pollution is taken into account in decision making. So-called social cost of carbon should be internalized. It reflects the polluter pays principle while also creating incentives for participation and behavioral changes. And what is the broader rationale? Without carbon pricing, carbon pollution is effectively unpriced, which has contributed to emissions-intensive development pathway. Carbon pricing helps correct this market failure by incorporating the cost of emissions into economic system. At the same time, it can generate important co-benefits, such as reducing local pollution and mobilizing finance for the transition to low and zero carbon economies. In particular, paragraph 136 of Decision 1 CP21, which accompanied the adoption of the Paris Agreement, recognized the important role of providing incentives for emission reduction activities, including tools such as domestic carbon pricing. Similarly, IPCC's Sixth Assessment Report, or AR6, highlights that carbon pricing can be effective in promoting the implementation of low-cost emission reductions. In this sense, carbon pricing serves as a practical tool and a useful tool to enable real emission reductions and help curb overall greenhouse gas emission at a global level. This slide provides a quick snapshot of carbon pricing developments globally. Today, around 80 carbon pricing instruments are in place, covering approximately 28% of global greenhouse gas emissions. At the same time, carbon credit markets are also expanding with the increasing use for both voluntary and compliance purposes. Overall, this reflects a growing global momentum towards using carbon pricing as a key climate policy tool. This slide also provides a snapshot of carbon pricing instruments across Northeast and Southeast Asia. As you can see, a range of approaches are being implemented in Northeast and Southeast Asia, including emission trading system, or ETS, and carbon taxes and other policy instruments. Notably, ICAP's latest status report, published last week, highlights that ETS developments are increasingly diversifying from absolute cap towards emission intensity-based approach. In this regard, today's dialogue is particularly meaningful, as well as we will hear directly from countries in this region that are at the forefront of this emerging trend. With that, I will conclude this overview, and we will now move to our first substantive session. This session will serve as a synthetic discussion focusing on the Paris Agreement Credit Mechanism, or PACM, including its recent developments and its role in carbon markets. This will also help frame our next session, where we explore domestic carbon pricing policies presented by countries, as well as potential opportunities for linkage with the PACM. With that, it is my pleasure to invite Mr. Peruma Arumuga, Manager of the Markets and Non-Market Supports and Stakeholders Interaction Subdivision at the UN Climate Change Secretariat, to deliver his presentation. Peruma, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, and good morning, everyone. So there might be no wonder for many people that I'm talking on PACM at this moment. So pleasure in meeting you all. And as Seong said, that I manage the division which is looking at the SIACA activities and also aspects related to the implementation of Article 6 of Paris Agreement from the UNFCCC Secretariat. So to begin with, I would start with why does it matter in carbon markets of having high integrity? The market-based mechanisms are the climate policies that are introduced to enable cost-effective mitigation and mobilize finance for mitigation activities, but also if you look at the fundamentals, we often talk about market-based mechanisms, but it also has 4 key objectives. One is in terms of providing an cost-effective mitigation and mobilizing finance. The second one is increasing the ambition over time to promote sustainable development and also to eradicate poverty. So if you look at the principles that have been enshrined in Article 6.1 of the Paris Agreement, both market and non-market based mechanisms are supposed to be delivering these 4 key objectives. The environmental integrity of carbon markets depends on whether a ton is a ton. So you can always see that a ton credited is equivalent to a ton of CO2 emission reductions actually reduced or removed. And if this fails, global emissions will continue to rise. Investments made to date risk becoming ineffective, and confidence in the credibility and effectiveness of carbon markets will be eroded. I always used to use an acronym, normally, like I think you all be very familiar with. Suppose if you have to have a secured financial transaction of transferring money from one account to the other, what is a normal thing that you use, which is basically the SWIFT code that you use in your financial transactions. So from a carbon market transactions as well, I would use a standard language of having the SWIFT, which are basically supplementarity, integrity, fungibility, and transparency. And what this mechanism is offering, the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism, is to enshrine that fundamental principles of how the supplementarity, fungibility, the integrity, and the transparency could be undertaken. The UNFCCC-led mechanism from the outset has placed a strong emphasis on ensuring environment integrity, including through the additionality provisions, which demonstrates that the reductions or removals would not have occurred in the absence of the mechanism. And also quite a strong stringency has been made in terms of not to have technology lock-in and making sure that the emission reductions are real, verifiable, and additional. You need to have conservative baseline, which ensures that the baseline emissions are not overestimated, and also to avoid any overcrediting. Robust MRV requirements to ensure that the reductions are accurately measured, reported, and verified. Finally, that any carbon market transaction should also ensure that there's an avoidance of double counting. There are provisions that are included in the decisions in order to make sure that the transactions are not double counted. Always carbon markets, it's a fancy word, but carbon markets is always a double-edged sword. If done properly, it contributes to reducing the emissions, and if it done wrongly, it increases the emissions. So that's where it becomes quite paramount. And if we are keeping on talking about integrity and why it matters, that's where it matters, because the Paris objective is to reduce emissions, not to increase emissions. The PACM is a new centralized UNFCCC baseline and crediting mechanism, and the only multilateral mechanism with an universal applicability for public and private sector. It has again 4 foundational pillars. One is to promote mitigation of GHG emissions while fostering sustainable development, contributing to the reduction of emissions levels in the host party, which will help. When I say host party, it is the party or country in which that the mitigation activity has been undertaken. Also benefits from those activities, but also can be used by other countries to fulfill their NDCs. In the whole Paris architecture, the only place where you will find the term private entity is in Article 6.4, which incentivizes and facilitates participation of mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions by both public and private entities and authorized by a party. Last but not least, one of the major principal requirements is that, like when we say 190 plus countries are part of the Paris Agreement, there are quite a number of countries that are in larger need of adaptation requirements. And by conceptual design, this mechanism is established to support adaptation activities in developing countries. And then in addition to that, you would also might have heard many times the criticism like carbon markets is not new. It is in existence from 1987, first SO2 market in the United States. Then we have the Kyoto Protocol starting from 1997 onwards. Carbon markets are always been criticized as zero-sum game, whereby a reduction is being enabled in one jurisdiction and the other jurisdiction is allowed to emit. So in the end, the net reductions or removals equals to zero. So by design, the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism also has introduced a concept called, I think particularly that's very much relevant speaking in the Asia and the Pacific region, where they were one of the drivers of having this concept of overall mitigation of global emissions. It's unfortunately that it is hidden behind me and Seong in the slide. So it's basically both adaptation and OMG are hidden behind us. So one of the conceptual things to address one of the bigger criticisms about the carbon market is also addressed through the overall mitigation of global emissions. Why this is a bit of a glance? Are we speaking out of a thin air? No. In order to participate in the centralized mechanism, a country has to establish the designated national authorities to engage with the mechanism. As we speak, a week before, until we have 126 parties to the Paris Agreement have established and designated their national authorities. And unlike during the Kyoto times, now each country has to also submit a host party participation form, indicating how participation in the mechanism contributes to sustainable development of the country, how it aligns to the country's NDC implementation. If the country has an LT-LEDs, how does it contribute to the LT-LEDs? But most predominantly, where the private sector would have the most interest is also that these forms identify the activity types and sectors where the countries are willing to engage in carbon markets and engaging to provide emission reduction units through the mechanism or through other cooperation means to transfer outside of the country's jurisdiction. In terms of activities, the mechanism was established also to respect the legacy, because in an international forum, if Kyoto is replaced by Paris, one can always argue that what next? So in order to make sure that there is a consistency and also to respect the legacy of what has been done, the new mechanism was designed to allow for a measured transition of activities from the earlier Kyoto mechanism to the Article 6. Many thought that it is going to be flooding the markets with the old credits, which is not the case. As you could see that there were about 1,500 plus eligible activities and about 150 have received the approval, and we are expecting another 130 to 150 before the mid of this year. Is that the mechanism or the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism, is it talking only about the old vintage projects? Absolutely not. We also have received prior notifications, which is basically an expression of interest to participate in the mechanism. So if you are a private sector party, a private sector company who is in the room, there's a requirement in the mechanism that 180 days from the investment decision you made, you have to submit a prior notification that you are interested to be part of this mechanism, which we have received from more than 1,100 projects coming from over 107 different countries. And as part of improving and increasing the third-party availability, we do have 14 accredited entities at this moment, and it might, and there are about other 11 to 12 applicants are available. I will not get into the details of the methodologies. We have a later slide on where we are with respect to the methodological development. And issuance, like again, it is very prevalent in where we are speaking. There was the first issuance of the Article 6.4 reductions happened from a joint project that was being invested by Korea. And that's the first project that has got an issuance under Article 6.4. So there's an established infrastructure already available to have the issuance. Next slide. Thanks. And in terms of ensuring that it is a global benchmark for high integrity carbon credits, the PACM has already implemented stringent standards for quantifying reductions from activities, including adjusting downwards based on the ambition over time principle. This is primarily important in a new NDC environment and scenario. If I'm in private sector, I would always love to have as many credits as possible to sell. But within the new Paris architecture, having every countries have taken a certain level of contribution to make based on their own national circumstances, it's very important that there is an equitable sharing in terms of the benefits that arise from an activity. So one way of ensuring that the emissions remains within the country is also one of the ways is addressing through having the baselines that are well aligned to the Paris principles and adjusted to the country's necessary requirements to meet their NDC targets. So the mechanism methodology has specific provisions if you are establishing a baseline on historical basis to adjust based on a downward adjustment to consider the ambition over time principles. The PACM has a two-layer approval process where there's an expert body coming from elected by the supervisory body and the supervisory body is elected by the parties to the Paris. So they have established a technical body and they make recommendation and then the standards are developed. And the current standards development are basically looking at the demand from the new activities that I specified earlier, the 1,100 plus projects and where there is an interest. And also looking at what has happened in the carbon market when the Paris architecture was still negotiating. We know that there's a lot happened externally, either through bilaterals or voluntary markets. And there were developments on certain areas which CDM had never had an experience. And CDM is a great knowledge source where when every other standard that exists outside says that they have a new standard, apart from removal side, most of the reduction activity based methodologies that exist outside the foundational stone come from the CDM. So I'm sure that this will be replicated going forward. If you go to the next slide. So the methodological principles, again, this is not being developed in a boardroom by 20 experts. This comes through the party process, both the methodological requirements as well as the requirements for activities involving removals, particularly on addressing issues related to calculating the net removals and also taking into account of the permanence requirements have been adopted by parties in the COP in Baku. And surprisingly that it was a first day adoption of the recommendation by the supervisory body by the parties to the Paris Agreement. The CMA is also regularly providing guidance to the supervisory body in this methodological development. And in the recently concluded COP in Belém, they have requested the supervisory body to continue to ensure the environmental integrity provisions that were adopted in those key documents that you see above come from Baku, and also to lay them along with the evidence that's available and the best available science that's available in order for you to make those standards, and not to make it just from the perspective of one lens of making a particularly attentive or attractive to carbon markets to private sector, but also to look at the best available science and also take an evidence-based approach. Next one. There are multiple standards and tools that are available. Currently, we have a standard relating to additionality, baseline leakage, and suppressed demand. In particular, countries that do have lower emissions would be using this in order to inflate the baseline to have a crediting delta so that they can engage in carbon markets. And also there are foundational provisions related to non-permanence and reversals. The tools to assess the risk related to the removal activities will be developed over the time. There are tools related to establishing common practice, investment analysis, emissions from solid waste disposal sites, again, uses the US EPA and the first order decay model, project emissions from flaring, mass flow of greenhouse gas in gaseous streams, And also, like suppose if you are engaging in an activity where you rehabilitate or you basically wanted to replace the existing equipment, how does the baseline should be established is based on the tool related to the technical lifetime of the replaced equipments. So the tools related to that is available. The most recent from the kitchen in February by the supervisory body is where the 70% of the carbon markets uh, occupied as a share between 2001 to 2020, which is from the emissions from the electricity generation or grid-connected electricity generation. And this tool addresses all types of fuel types, and the tool is already available based on the recent developments that happened in the sector. From a methodology perspective, we have one adopted standard addressing the solid waste in a social sector or in a country which is completely unorganized. These are some of the bottom-up methodologies. Yeah, Mike, okay. So some of the bottom-up standards that are currently being developed by the mechanism, you could see that like in the May meeting, in the mid of May, we will have the PMM2, which is basically the mechanism methodology, proposed mechanism methodology on N2 abatement from nitric acid production. We know that there was a larger interest to that. There was a methodology that is being submitted. So you would be finding this is based on the baseline standard on best available technology approach, and also it also includes for existing plants in reducing emissions from the nitric acid production. Some of the other methodologies that you could see here, one is in relation to green ammonia and green hydrogen. These two have also occupied a significant portion in terms of the interest from the new activities. So we expect both the fertilizer production with renewable-based ammonia and basically PMM 001 and PMM 006 will for sure be developed before the end of this year. We also have other methodologies like pumped hydro storage and supply of electricity to grid. And there is a public call that has been launched based on, again, another favorite topic in the carbon markets is the clean cooking solutions. So the methodology PMM4, which is basically a comprehensive lowered emission assessment and reporting for cooking and energy transition. So this includes, I could see some familiar faces from the actual market players. So you might be very familiar with the two methodologies, both AMS1E and AMS2G under the CDM, addressing issues related to non-renewable biomass. So this methodology will be a consolidated methodology of the two existing CDM methodology and the new submission. It has been launched for a public call. Maybe it might be already there because last week we had the meeting of the MET expert group. So it was decided to launch a public call. So if anybody is interested to look at, and it also has, I would like to hear more from practitioners because it has provisions related to permanence and the possible risk of reversals from non-renewable biomass, which is not what exists in the current voluntary market or independent standards. So it will be quite interesting to see reactions from market when this standard is up for public comments by the MEP this week. Next one. This is basically like another consolidation of what I said as a different methodological work, but I just wanted to emphasize something which is in the yellow color. So it's not that we are just working on bottom-up methodologies, but also that we are working on top-down methodologies based on the mandate given by SBM. So we have 19 methodologies under top-down and about 31 methodologies from the bottom-up with an aim to have a significant stock of methodologies which can cover the current market share of reduction types of activities more than 80% in terms of the volume. Not on removals, as I said, that there's a significant piece of work related to how to assess the risk and the risk assessment tool and the exit options for post-crediting monitoring for activities after the crediting period on how do you ensure permanence for those removal types of activities or reduction activities with the risk of reversals, particularly very relevant for RED+ type of activities. So we have been working on the tools. So until such time, the standards on removals might not see the light under the PACM before the end of this year. Are we only talking about methodological standards, or do we do beyond that? The mechanism also has safeguards in making sure, like everyone who is in this room, one of the independent standard had its USP by adding the GHG quantification with an SD assessment on a voluntary basis. And that was the business model for one of the independent standard in the past during the KP, which of course has moved away from that. But what parties have adopted now under Article 6 is that there is a mandatory requirement to do an SD assessment and also to be reported as part of the regular verification. And it has to be done through the third party. In the past, the stakeholder consultations are limited at the design stage of the project. Now the stakeholder consultation is a continuous process under Article 6.4. Global and local stakeholder consultation also existed in the previous process, but now it also provides an opportunity to have broad and continuous participation 24/7. And you also have the independent appeals and grievance processes to ensure accountability and address to the stakeholder concerns, because earlier the final buck stops with the executive board. Now it's no longer stays with the SDM. You as a directly affected activity participant can always appeal the decision of the supervisory body. And if you have any specific grievance, it can always be raised. PACM produces two asset categories. One is an authorized emission units. So oftentimes people, the moment you say Article 6, they say it's all about compliance. But what you could see here is that Article 6 will also deliver the credits that could be used for voluntary contributions, and also it can contribute to complying with the mandatory targets under domestic carbon pricing instruments. We have seen in the past where, for example, again, we are sitting in Korea, where Korea has translated the CDM CERs, cancelled in the CDM registry, reissued in the Korea as a KERs, Korean emission reductions, to use within its domestic carbon markets. And we also have seen there are countries still not close. Okay. Sorry for that. So now we are also seeing that quite a lot of countries allow units. Earlier used the units or credits generated from international carbon markets to be used in the domestic pricing instruments. And we see a trend of that going forward more in the future. And also it can contribute in achieving the net zero commitments and mobilizing climate finance. It's basically quite important because today carbon markets, over time, we would also be having markets in which that countries would be having not that many to be authorized and sold outside. So most of the interaction in the carbon market should be happening through the MCUs. And we also know that quite a number of big oil majors are also now started looking at MCUs, and some of the major donor countries of climate finance within the UNFCCC context are also looking at using 6.4 MCUs as a part of, as a way and means to channel finance and recognize for contribution towards climate finance. Next one. The PACM is one of the cooperative approach, and again, you might hear me as a broken record if you're here for the next 4 days. So this is the one and only multilateral crediting mechanism. But the most important that if you're a private sector that you have to understand is that any bilateral cooperation that is currently happening is a closed market. You don't have an opportunity of a secondary trading if it has been authorized for an NDC purposes. Whilst under the PACM, since the PACM itself is a cooperative approach, what you engage within the PACM gives you an open market access, whereby once you have engaged in Article 6.4, the units can be used by any of the other non-host parties to meet their NDC targets with minimum administrative burden. So this is one of the key benefits on the flexibility under Article 6. I'm sure that if some of you in the room have been engaging in some of the bilateral cooperations, again, very relevant to this region, probably our colleague from METI will be coming soon. So if you have JCM as one of the most popular approaches, I would say, from this region. So for example, if JCM is engaging with multiple user parties or multiple cooperative approaches, Japan has to submit an initial report, or each of its cooperation constitutes a single cooperative approach. And alternatively, what you see from the PACM here is that what you engage is with the cooperative approach of the PACM itself. So you basically, your cooperation is not with individual countries, but it is a cooperation with the centralized multilateral mechanism. So that makes you an access, open access for you to reach to any partners, not limited to only bilateral partners. So that's the most important piece of element that you need to see as the benefits. In terms of Secretariat supports to participation in the PACM, beyond all the capacity building and other elements that we provide, some of the significant things is that the PACM establishes the registry that records the authorized and the MCUs in its mechanism registry, and there is a mandate for it to be connected to the international registry, and also a mandate to help countries to prepare the AEF. I'm sure that everyone in this room knows what AEF is. It is basically an annual report in which that you include the information on quantitative information on the mitigation outcomes that are transferred internationally. And there is a mandatory requirement that, like if you are from a private company, you prepare your balance sheets for a financial calendar from 1st April to probably 31st March, or in some countries it also works in an annual calendar, but under the mechanism and under the Article 6, you have an obligation to provide those information on an annual basis for the transactions that happened in the previous year, in the subsequent year before 15th of April, you have an obligation to provide this information. Please do look at that AEF template and ask people who have used how easy it is to use. So what PACM offers is that the automized AEF templates that will be pre-filled for countries to submit their annual information for the subsequent consistency check that will be undertaken by the Secretariat. The Secretariat is also currently working, like you might have seen, quite a number of bilateral cooperations under which the reviews have been launched and significant inconsistencies have been identified in terms of reporting. So for the PACM, you would be having a standardized cooperative approach elements that will be prepared and that can be used off the shelf by countries when they submit their initial reports for their engagement with the mechanism. And finally, the Secretariat is also providing technical support. Previously, Seong has called on for SIACA support, both Julie and Uma in the room from different regional collaboration centers. We have 4 more from other regions. We have 6 regional collaboration centers and the Central Secretariat in Bonn. So we also provide the technical support in developing and standardize baselines and also other bottom-up methodologies. With that, over to you, Seong. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Peruma, for your detailed insights on PACM. As we are running slightly short on time, we'll take questions after session 2. Thank you for your kind understanding. As we move to the next session, may I kindly invite our speakers to come to the front and take their seats on the stage. Thank you. In this session, we'll hear from countries in Northeast and Southeast Asia that are introducing carbon pricing instruments, whether on a voluntary or mandatory basis, or somewhere in between. We aim to learn about their progress to date, as well as the challenges they have encountered in the process of implementation. Today, we are pleased to have 4 countries sharing their updates: Japan, India, the Republic of Korea, and Indonesia. We'll begin with the brief country presentations, and the time permitting, we'll open the floor for a broader discussion with our distinguished participants. To start, it is my pleasure to invite Japan, which has transitioned its GX ETS to a mandatory scheme this year. We are pleased to be joined by Mr. Ryosuke Tanaka, Section Chief at the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, or METI. Ryosuke-san, if you are comfortable with that, using that podium, I would like to invite you there. You can see the monitor up there. Please welcome Ryosuke-san with a big applause.
Hello, everyone. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. So my name is Ryosuke Tanaka from the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry of Japan. So, and I belong to the GX group, so which is responsible for carbon pricing policy, including GX ETS. And usually I work on the climate mitigation, so especially on the field of the mitigation field. And so at the outset, so I like to express my sincere appreciation to the Republic of Korea, so as the host country, so for organizing this important and timely event. Thank you so much. So for now, so I'd like to start my presentation. So this slide shows the basic concept. So this slide is about the progress carbon pricing. So this is one of the key concepts of the GX ETS. So Japan's progress carbon pricing is designed to promote the GX investment. So not only the simply to import costs. So the idea is to combine upfront investment and support and carbon pricing, so the idea is and carbon pricing so that companies can invest in GX in a predictable manner. First, the government provides strong support for upfront investment, including 20 trillion yen, so approximately $130 billion in GX economy transition bonds. The carbon pricing is strengthened gradually. So the emissions trading system starts full-scale operation from 2026. The fossil fuel levy starts from 2028, and the paid auction for power generation companies start from 2033. The important point is the policy sequence. The government firstly gives companies time and strong support to promote GX. After that, carbon pricing is raised gradually. So this means that the earlier company take actions, the lighter its future burden becomes. In this way, the system is designed to draw the private investment in GX. So this slide explains how Japan designs investment support under GX. So this focus is on efforts that are difficult for the private sector to do by itself, but are important for industrial competitiveness, economic growth, and emission reduction. In short, the government is not supporting decarbonization separately from growth. So we are trying to support investment so that can help both decarbonization and economic growth. So this shows a wide range of sectors covered by Japan's GX investment promotion measures. They include energy, steel, and chemicals, paper and pulp, cement, automobiles, batteries, hydrogen and its derivatives. So next generation renewable energy, nuclear power, carbon capture and storage, semiconductors, and resource circulation. So this broader coverage shows Japan sees GX as a transformation of the economy, especially in energy-intensive and manufacturing sectors. So this slide explains how GX ETS is developed step by step. It starts on a trial basis in 2023 under the GX League as a voluntary scheme as of 2024. Over 700 companies are participating, covering about 6% of Japan's total emissions. From 2026, the system starts full-scale operation with stronger rules for participation target setting and target achievement. From 2033, it will be further developed through the gradual introduction of paid auction for power generation sectors. So this slide is another key. So the system covers corporations with direct CO2 emissions over 100,000 tons. Covered companies submit transition plans toward carbon neutrality by 2050, report emissions data verified by a third-party organization, and surrender sufficient allowances for their annual emissions. Non-compliance results in a penalty. Another important feature is price stabilization through the price corridor, so with upper and lower limit prices. So the GX Accelerator Agency also establishes the emissions trading market. The important point I'd like to emphasize is this Japan's GX ETS is significant because it institutionalizes emissions reduction not simply as a cost, but as a growth strategy, mobilizing investment. In Japan, ETS is positioned as a part of our broader GX policy package that promotes decarbonization and stronger industry competitiveness at the same time. So to conclude, Japan's GX is built on three pillars: energy security, economic growth, and emissions reduction. So based on this concept, pro-growth carbon pricing and GX ETS are designed to promote upfront investment and to make decarbonization a driver of growth and industrial transformation. So that's it. Thank you.
It is very interesting to see how Japan is strengthening its climate policy through the GX initiative, taking learning by doing approach. Thank you very much for sharing this latest developments, Ryusuke-san. And next, we will turn to India, which announced its plans to introduce the carbon credit trading scheme, or CCTX, last year and has since been elaborating on its detailed implementation. We are pleased to be joined by Ms. Shweta Kumar, Director at the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. She will share with us where the CCTS currently stands and how it is expected to contribute to the achievement in India's NDC. Shweta, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to present here, and really thankful to host us in this beautiful city. I'll be sharing India's progress and experience with carbon pricing instrument, As one of the fastest growing major economy, India faces the dual challenge of development needs while also addressing climate change. Carbon pricing instrument is emerging as an important policy tool to help balance these priorities, and this presentation will outline how India is approaching this transition. I'll begin with an overview of India's climate commitment under NDC, followed by its LTLEDS strategy, and I will then move to India's experience with carbon pricing, including the development of India's carbon market and CCTS. I will also touch upon India's participation in international carbon market mechanism under Article 6, supporting digital infrastructure, and finally, the key challenges and the way forward. India's climate action are anchored in its NDC under the Paris Agreement. These commitments focus on reducing the emission intensity of GDP rather than absolute emission, which is important for a developing country with growing energy and infrastructure needs. And if we look at the slide from starting from 2015, when we first submitted our NDC, we have consistently enhanced our target, starting from 33% reduction in emission intensity to 45% for the 2030 period. And then we have recently updated our NDC and we have enhanced the target to 47%. And when it comes to achievement, we have already achieved 36% reduction, and this was achieved 11 years ahead of the schedule. And simultaneously, we have also achieved about like cumulative electric power installed capacity. Initially, the target was for 40%. This was enhanced further to 50%. And in the current NDC, which is the latest NDC, we have enhanced it to further 60% for the 2035 period. And in terms of achievement, we have as of now, we have achieved 52.57%. And this target was achieved. The initial 40% was 9 years ahead of the schedule. And the third one was important one to create an additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion ton of CO2 equivalent, which was further enhanced in the current NDC to 3.5 to 4 billion ton, and we have achieved somewhere around 2.29 billion ton of CO2 equivalent. India's long-term low-emission development strategy provides a broader framework for transitioning to a lower carbon future, aligned with its long-term goal of net zero by 2070. This strategy is built around 7 key transitions, covering sectors such as electricity, transport, industry, urban development, and forestry. The emphasis on integrating climate action with development priorities, ensuring that economic growth, energy access, and sustainability go hand in hand, and many of these transitions are already underway through targeted policies and initiatives, making this strategy both forward-looking and grounded in current action. Traditionally, India has relied on indirect carbon pricing mechanisms such as coal cess, perform, achieve, and trade scheme, and other regulatory measures. However, it is now moving toward more explicit market-based measures. The CCTS was notified in 2023 that establishes the framework for Indian carbon market. This system introduces both compliance and offset mechanism, aiming to reduce greenhouse gas emission in a more cost-effective manner while enabling trading of carbon credits. The objective is to create economic incentives for emission reduction and to align India's domestic policies with global carbon market trends. In the first phase, under the compliance mechanism, we are covering hard-to-abate sectors like cement and going forward for steel, which is one of the priority area listed under LTLEDS. We have started the first phase of compliance mechanism, where in the last year in October, we have given the target to 282 obligated entities for aluminum, cement, chloralkali, and pulp and paper. And in this year, in January, we have a target set for next sectors like aluminum, petroleum, refining, petrochemical, textiles. Total targets have been notified for 490 obligated entities. Under the offset mechanism, we have already identified 10 sectors, including energy, industry, agriculture, solvent use, construction, waste handling and disposal, fugitive emission, and transport. And so far, we have developed 8 methodology, which would be published in public domain. It is also actively engaging with international carbon market under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, and under Article 6.2, we have already signed MOC with the government of Japan, and yesterday only with the government of Republic of Korea. And we have also for 6.2 and 6.4 listed a 13 positive list of activities, which include sustainable aviation fuel, green hydrogen, hard to abate sector, to participate in both the mechanism. And we have also submitted host party participation requirement. We have already received 600 project concept note under 6.4, which we are internally analyzing it at present. A robust digital infrastructure is essential for effective functioning of carbon market. India is developing a comprehensive system consisting of an ICM portal and a registry. The portal manages the entire project cycle, including registration, validation, verification, while the registry ensures accurate tracking of carbon credits and transaction. This infrastructure enhances transparency, prevent double counting, and build trust among stakeholders. It also enables integration with international mechanism, which is critical as carbon market become increasingly interconnected. The work is still in progress. This is the last slide. Despite the progress made, several challenges remain for at least Article 6. One of the key issues is the lack of clear demand for certain types of carbon credit, particularly MCUs under the 6.4. I understand Perumal has explained it, but in our stakeholder consultation, whenever we, this is one question that come up from them, like where would be the demand for MCUs, because this is one sector that we really want to explore, because we can open up more sector for MCUs beyond our 13 list of activities. There's also fragmentation across different international standards, which create complexity and uncertainty. Technology transfer remains another critical challenge, especially for developing countries. Moving forward, the focus will be on operationalizing carbon markets, strengthening demand, enhancing policy clarity, and deepening international cooperation to address these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Shata. I just realized I didn't mention this earlier, but congratulations on submitting your new NDC last month, and thank you as well for today's very comprehensive presentation covering both CCTS and your plans for carbon market and Article 6 participation. I'm sure the audience found it extremely insightful. Thank you very much. Now, moving on to the next country update. It is my pleasure to invite the Republic of Korea, which has been implementing a nationwide emission trading scheme, the KETS, for a decade. And it is also the host country of this Climate Week 3. We are joined by Mr. Jung Kang, Deputy Director at the Ministry of Climate, Energy and Environment. Jung-un, you have the floor.
Thank you for the introduction. And can you... I'm Jung Kang from the Ministry of Climate, Energy and Environment, and I'm in charge of the ETS offset program. And I would like to thank the Secretariat for giving me this opportunity to introduce our KETS program. Since 2015, we have been operating the ETS system, emission trading scheme, which is the cost-effective and practical instrument to reach our NDC target by utilizing a market mechanism to reduce our greenhouse gas emission. And this is the most powerful tool in mitigating emission in Korea, and it covers more than 70% of national emissions. So ETS is enacted in 2012, and since ETS phase 1, we have accepted the CER credit from the UNFCCC, and now we are entered into the ETS phase 4, covered period from 2026 to 2030, and now we are being ready for accepting the Article 6 credit. And we see offset program as the flexibility mechanism that allows the business entity to buy KOCs, which is called Korea offset credits, issued from the offset project, and convert them into the KCU, which is Korea credit units, to surrender for their compliance. So the purpose of the this program is to provide flexibility for compliance, and also the business entity can use the this offset credit for up to 5% of the entity's allowances for their surrendering. And the offset project is also called like external project. Is the project that reduce, absorb, or remove greenhouse gas emission outside business entities or outside ETS boundary. So this is the overall operation structure. So while Ministry of Climate, Energy and Environment oversees the whole program, there are 5 sectoral competent authorities, which is relevant ministries, and they are working with the sectoral and technical expertise, which is operation entities, and on the review of the documents such as project approval and registration methodology and certification of reduction. And all this work should be deliberated by emission certification committee, which is consists of private expertise and also senior government officers. And there are verification bodies dealing with the having role with third-party review. And all these processes should be registered in real time through offset registry system. So this is the legal basis. So we have the four legal base for the this offset program. So firstly, Framework Act on Carbon Neutrality and Growth, Green Growth introduced the ETS scheme, and we also acted the ETS for the ETS, and also we have another thing for the for implementation as enforcement decree. And lastly, we have the guideline for the validation and the verification of offset project to specify the details. And to be eligible as offset program, it should be a fundamental reduction. It should be the voluntary project outside the ETS boundary. And also, we have to you have to enroll the methodology in advance, and we see additionality as a key consideration. And also, of course, we do not allow the double counting. And regarding the UNFCCC credit, as I told you, from phase 1 to phase 3, we have accepted CER, and now we are ready to accept the Article 6 credit, and it will be done through a much simplified process. So it will take a shorter time than the normal offset project. As our time is limited, so let me just escape for that, because I'm gonna dealing with the in discussion session. And also basically we have the so the from the offset project, the KOC is issued, which is called Korean Offset Credit, and this can be converted into Korea credit unit. And this to be registered for offset project and methodologies. So project participant should submit a project document or methodologies, and it will be reviewed by sectoral competent authorities, which is ministry, and it goes to the emission certification committee for their deliberation. And if there is no issues, then it will be registered by the authority. And for issuance of KOCs, the process is pretty much the same with the approval of project or the reviewing methodology. However, in this process, project participants submit their, they have to conduct their own monitoring review, and it will be verified by verification bodies. And later process is same with the previous one. So this is the current status of offset program in Korea. So a total of 321 methodologies have been registered, and with 110 of them are developed by Korean government or the domestic project participants. And if you look at the below tables, the an industry sector has highest number of registered methodologies. And this is my last slide. So to date, 1,389 projects have been registered. of which 373 projects are from CDM, and a total of 58.5 million tons of KOCs have been issued, and of which 96% from the CDM project. And nearly 60% of KOCs have been converted into KCU for surrendering to the government for compliance. So this is my, this concludes my presentation, and I will be happy for further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Jung-eun. If I may add personal note, I was working on the KATS in its very first year, so it is quite meaningful for me to see how much progress has been made since then. Thank you, Jung-eun, again. And now, let me move on to our last but not least speaker. We will turn to Indonesia, which is implementing the economic value of carbon trading scheme. We are pleased to be joined by Ms. Nurul Aziza, a technical policy analyst at the Ministry of Environment. She will share with us recent developments of the scheme. Nurul, you have the floor.
Hi, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nurul Aziza from Ministry of Environment. Different from the previous speaker, I might be not using slides. I will be like deliver some, I don't know, maybe short speech, but Soyoung, maybe you can just present the slide with the name, with my name on it. Is it okay?
저희 슬라이드로 계속 그냥 놔두시겠어요?
Yeah, but that's okay. I will focus my sharing on the recent development of the carbon economic value, as Soyoung previously stated, that we just last year at the October 2025, we promulgated a new presidential regulation that regarding the carbon pricing umbrella regulations, and that will be our newest and that require a newest regulation that require many changes in our way doing the carbon pricing instruments. So Ministry of Environment, where I'm working, I specifically focusing on the integration of our national carbon registry and sectoral governance. As I said previously, I've been closely involved in the development of our new policy framework under Presidential Regulation 110 to 2025. So I'm very excited to share the under-the-roof reality of how Indonesia is calibrating the domestic system for international readiness. So in Indonesia, we've moved past the initial phase of our carbon pricing framework and enter a phase of intensive structural realignment. And to be honest, it is a complex and often difficult transition because we try to use every instrument available in carbon pricing. We don't pick just one instrument. We integrate emission trading system in our electricity subsector. We also use carbon offsetting. We also, for the longest time, we use result-based payment or RBP with the instrument from RBP Red Plus, and eventually we try to also use a mechanism of carbon tax. To address this, we recently reduced the new regulation. The centerpiece of this regulation is a National Steering Committee development that we realized that the Ministry of Environment itself cannot and should not carry this burden alone of operationalizing the carbon pricing instruments. This committee is our way of forcing a shift toward full sectoral ownership, and we are decentralizing the technical responsibilities to our line ministries like energy, industry, forestry, and waste. It's a major overhaul of our governance, and while it's a work in progress, it's a necessary step to ensure that climate action is embedded in every sector, not just one ministry. If you ask me about the biggest challenge, I would directly address the guiding questions. It's building horizontal and vertical coherence. Maybe it sounds technical, but in reality, it's about alignment of development agenda of every sector. Horizontally, our steering committee is working hard to get different ministry on the same page on the where this carbon pricing instrument we're gonna be. And vertically, we are in a way legalizing the technical burden of each sector, which means that we are asking them to deep dive into their data and calculate. Maybe I use the term of carbon cushion or carbon buffer. This means that they have to look at least their NDC 3.0 and anticipate their own future needs. For example, for our transport sector, that also has to factor in our aviation industry requirements under CORSIA. And maybe I won't sugarcoat it. This is a struggle, getting every sector to realize they are now in the kitchen and responsible for their own technical integrity is a massive cultural and institutional shift. But we believe it's essential. And we rather go through this struggle now to ensure that we don't accidentally transfer outcome that we might actually need for our own target later. To operationalize this, we are shifting for a centralized, this is the major change that we currently develop. We are shifting a centralized reporting model to what we call decentralized integrity framework through SRUK or System Registry Unit Carbon or Unit Carbon Registry System, while still maintaining our national registry, this SRN, National Registry System, that remains the ultimate backbone for international transparency and reporting under the UNFCCC. And this SRUK then acts as the sectoral gatekeeper. The objective here is to ensure that the technical burden, the approval, the verifying complex methodologies and tracking sectoral carbon balance is managed directly by the ministries who actually understand the sector itself. Essentially, we are building a multi-layer governance where SRUK handles sectoral validation and then the SRN handles national authorization and global reporting. This structure is designed to prevent administrative bottlenecks and, more importantly, to ensure that every ton of carbon is fed by the right technical experts at the source before it ever reaches the national account. For us, international trust start with this domestic technical rigor. Regarding the international linkages, our objective is pragmatic. We see the global market as a tool to help us bridge the viability gap funding that we needed to implement our target of NDCs. We have many high impact mitigation projects that are just too expensive to be funded domestically, and international carbon finance through Article 6. We see its potential to provide that necessary push. But our narrative is that this linkage must be a transparent pipeline. We are using the market to pull our sector towards better data and better standards. And it's not just about selling credits, but building a credible national carbon economy. If there is one lesson that we've learned in this short times of changes from last year, it's that sectoral ownership is hard, but it's the only way. Having a legally mandated steering committee helps, but the daily work of coordination is where the real challenges lies. Indonesia, we still can probably say that very much learning by doing. We are still calibrating, still navigating the internal debates, but we are believe that this path of domestic rigor is the only way to be reliable partner in the global market. Thank you. Maybe I will look forward to learning from your experience as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Nurul, once again for sharing the very insightful update on the latest developments in Indonesia. And thank you very much, our all four speakers. As the Secretariat, we do follow developments in carbon pricing instruments across countries through secondary sources, but there are always limitations when it comes to the capturing the most up-to-date insights, especially from non-English speaking countries. That's why today's discussion has been particularly valuable, for more concrete and timely perspectives. It was particularly interesting to see that while all four countries have systems broadly similar to emission trading schemes, there are important differences into the detailed design of the system. In this context, the potential linkages with the international carbon markets could offer opportunities to enhance flexibility as well as to support the international expansion of domestic mitigation technologies. With that in mind, I would like to pose a few follow-up questions to our speakers. Let me start with Japan. Rusuke-san, in the case of Japan, my understanding is that JSM credits are currently prioritized as eligible international offset credits. Do you plan to maintain this approach going forward, or are there any plans to also globally recognize the high integrity credit, such as those under the PACUM?
Okay.
Yeah, you can say.
Thank you so much for the question. So, from my perspective, so international carbon markets and JCM mechanism, joint carbon mechanism and high integrity credits can play an important supporting role. So, but they should not replace strong domestic action. So, international carbon markets can help expand decarbonization across borders, so support the spread of technologies and mobilize finance. So, for example, so Japan promotes the JCM as a way to contribute to emissions reduction. So, in our partner countries, through the dissemination of Japan's leading decarbonization technologies, products, and infrastructure. So, Japan recognizes the importance of promoting high integrity carbon markets and crediting schemes. At the same time, so environmental integrity and strong domestic market signals require a solid domestic backbone in Japan's emissions trading system. So that backbone includes transition plans, so third-party verification and the penalties for non-compliance and the price corridor with upper and lower limit prices. So in my view, international carbon markets should complement domestic carbon pricing instruments. So while the main signal for domestic mitigation should still come from a credible domestic framework. So I'd like to also emphasize one more point. So if international credits are used, so their integrity must be very clear. My understanding is that international carbon markets can support domestic carbon pricing systems when they are high integrity, rule-based, and clearly positioned. So not as a substitute for domestic mitigation, so but as a complement to it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I may add one more question. So when it comes to environment integrity, could you elaborate on the safeguard in place to ensure the environment integrity of JCM credits?
Sorry, could you speak again?
Yes. I fully understand that your ministry is also responsible for JCM, right? And do you share some kind of safeguard to safeguard in place to ensure the environment integrity of the JCM credits?
So actually, so yeah, so Yes, so reminder, yes, actually, so I'm not in charge of the JCM, so the policies are not directly, actually, I'm so usually yes, in charge of mitigation and technology transfer. That's why I'm so don't have the specific answer for it just now for that so question. But so while my colleagues are engaging to adjust the rules so on JCM and the high integrity carbon market. So yeah, so we are proceeding and advancing that so rules structures. So that's why, and also so if we need more. If we say yes, need more, more detailed information, we can exchange information anytime, and I can check that situation with my colleagues and anytime. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for your kind understanding. And as we have several JSM partner countries today here, and your initiative is also meaningful to support developing countries' climate ambition and actions. Thank you for your answer. And moving on to India, Shemar. For India, as the system is still its early stages, it appears that the use of internationally issued credit is not currently emphasized. But you also mentioned that you have some potential advantage in engaging with the there may be some advantage in engaging with the unilateral PACUM activities hosted in India, particularly in terms of environmental integrity and capacity building for your system. Could you share where there are any plans to explore the use of PACUM in this context? I know you already covered some aspects, but it would be helpful to elaborate a bit further.
Thank you for raising that question. It's a fair observation, and yes, the Indian carbon market is still in early stages. At present, GHG emission intensity target have been notified to obligated entity that I mentioned in the slides. And under CCTS compliance mechanism, trading in carbon credit certificate has not yet commenced, and we are planning it somewhere around October, November this year. As a result, we are yet to see how many entities will meet their targets through internal abatement and how the real demand supply dynamics for the carbon credit certificate will develop when trading begins. And given this, our immediate focus is to allow the domestic compliance market to find its footing. If over time we see that the supply of carbon credit certificate within the compliance mechanism is insufficient to support effective compliance and credible price discovery, we would then consider appropriate design option. And one such option would be to explore whether the carbon credit certificate generated under the offset mechanism could be permitted. And that said, we remain pragmatic as the system mature and we learn from the market outcome. We can examine a wider set of options, including international instrument, and if they're needed, and if they can be integrated without compromising environmental integrity or domestic mitigation option. Thank you.
Thank you, Shema. And let me turn to the Republic of Korea. Jong-un, in the case of Korea, we have seen several adjustments over time, including changes to offset limits and the use of international offset credits, particularly up to first the compliance phase. Could you share the key consideration behind this policy decision? And building on your experience with allowing international credit under the offset mechanism, have you observed any improvements or impact following their introduction?
Okay, there are two questions. So firstly, yes, the quantitative limit of offset has been managed quite carefully. Also, it's changed over time. So basically, Korea has been to ensure that the ETS remains the primary tools for mitigation emission. So, and although we have the offset or even offset program were introduced to provide flexibility, but it is supposed not to replace the direct mitigation effort by covered entity or business entities. So also in the earlier phase, like the phase 1 or 2, a broader use of offset credit were allowed, but now we are entering into phase 4. The limit has been reduced from 10% of entities' allowance to 5%, and this reflects that our view is we are saying we see the offset should play supplementary role, not central in this scheme, and this is for the ensuring the environmental integrity of carbon market. And another important consideration in phase 4 is the transition from CDM to the Article 6.4 under the Paris Agreement. And in the context, we are paying attention to the rules on the corresponding adjustment to prevent the double counting. And the next question was the experience with allowing the international credit. So yes, allowing international credit was really very useful and strategic, and also we see a lot of the improvement or impact to the national scheme. Firstly, the introduction of the international credit has expanded the role of the Korean ETS beyond just regulational scheme. I mean, it has created lots of opportunity for Korean company to engage more actively in overseas mitigation project, rather than just purchasing their credit. They actually go to the partner countries, and they are participating in or developing the project for the carbon credit. I think this is the really very fruitful outcome, or the outcome by allowing the international credit into the national scheme. And also it is also very helpful for the promoting the green technology in Korea, and also I think it opened the new business model or new business opportunity in emerging market. And also, we have seen the improvement on the institutional side. So in order to integrate the international credit, such as CER, Korea had to strengthen and align our national carbon market infrastructure, such as registry system or MRB system with international standard, including a UNFCCC framework and or IPCC guideline. So this process has really enhanced our transparency, credibility, or environmental integrity of our domestic carbon market. Yes.
Thank you. If I may add one more question, because you just mentioned the environmental integrity. What are the key criteria or priorities on ensuring environmental integrity when determining the eligibility of the Korean offset credits?
Environmental integrity has always been our top priority in Korea for mitigating scheme. Of course, the strict or the stringent approach can sometimes lead to procedural delay or longer period review for the project approval, but we still believe that maintaining high standard is essential for their long-term credibility. And also, if you think about the linkage with the emerging international credit mechanism, then it is not an option; it is mandatory. So, in terms of eligibility, the first and most important criteria is the additionality. So, we need to be confident that that reduction would not happen without the offset project. In other words, the offset project must go beyond a business as usual, and also go beyond what is required or mandated by laws or regulations. So to keep that, we require the rigorous approach or methodology, including clear baseline setting or appropriate project boundary or scope definitions. And also, second priority is the avoiding double counting. Of course, becomes even more important under the Paris Agreement mechanism. So we are trying to review very carefully whether that project or credit from project has already been registered or certified in other compliance scheme, or even in the voluntary carbon market. So if we found it, then these reductions are not eligible for under the Korean offset program. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for a very insightful answer. And let me move on to the rule. For Indonesia, it is my understanding that there has recently been a strong signal to intend to engage more actively in the international carbon market. Could you clarify well this is being pursued in connection with your economic value of the carbon trade scheme? And could you elaborate on how linkages with international carbon markets are being considered under this scheme?
Okay, thank you, Sayong, for the question. Maybe allows me to address what the intention behind the this call out signals. Yes, Indonesia is signaling a strong intent to engage internationally. We do several MOUs, several independent crediting scheme and such. But behind the scene, we have to be clear that um, our intention is grounded in a concept that we call, I would like to, this is a very strong word, but national carbon security. But yeah, is as I touched upon my presentation, this shift to more sectoral ownership via the new regulations is also primary defense, not really defense. Oh yeah, strategy. We are now requiring every sector to calculate a mandatory carbon carbon cushion for the buffer for the next target. This is a rigorous internal exercise where sectors must look, I don't know, maybe 10 or 20 years into the future and build that roadmap by it. They have to anticipate the rising ambitions of NDCs, our long-term strategy, and then maybe the domestic demands, because we have also our own aviation's industry. Getting a sector to realize that they might actually need those carbon units for their own targets for the next years, rather than selling them internationally without calculating or modeling the demands for the future for domestic use. This is a struggle worth having. We are sharing this because we want our international partners know that Indonesia is reliable provider, and we finally authorize a unit for the international market. It is because we have proof that it's a genuine surplus, and we are building a pipeline where market signals and national ambition are in coherence. We are not just selling credits. We are like contributing to our to the global goal with absolute transparency. And then for the second question about the linkages, leads me to the why behind our linkages strategy. For Indonesia, linking with international carbon market is a strategy for technological transformation. We are aware that what we call the viability gap funding that needed for our transition toward net zero 2060. We have identified numerous high impact mitigation projects, such as we need the floating solar PV to advance industrial electrification that are technically feasible but economically out of reach right now through our domestic funding alone. This objective for linkage is provide the price premium necessary to bridge this gap. We see the international market as a tool to achieve these three strategic goals. So we have first goal, which is lowering the cost of capital, and by integrating our two registry system with international standards, and also our national crediting scheme, we try to reduce the risk for global investor. We provide a safe corridor where the investment is protected by the high integrity legally authorized units that fungible in global markets. And then we also try to accelerate technology transfer. We want the carbon market to pull our domestic industries toward global best practice. Linkage forces our sectors to adopt their highest standards of MRV in exchange to international finance, effectively using the market as an industrial upgrade mechanism. And then maybe the last, to achieve the fair price. We want to ensure that Indonesian carbon is valued fairly. coherent linkage ensure that our national efforts are benchmarked against global price, providing a sustainable and predictable incentive for our transition. In conclusion, maybe for Indonesia, linkage is the financial and technological bridge between our domestic readiness and our global ambition and targets. We are, like I said previously, we are learning by doing, navigating intense international debates every day, but we believe that this part of domestic technical rigor is the only way to build a high integrity global system. When we are trying to be part of it, we are building a national carbon economy that is not just accountable for our own people by integrating the safeguard, but ready to be a reliable partner for the climate solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Nurul. Actually, we had originally planned the next segment as an interactive session, but due to time constraint, I think we'll instead open the floor for your questions and comments to encourage our participants' active engagement. So if you have a question, please raise your hand, and please use the standing microphone in the center of the room. And when you take the floor, please introduce yourself first, your name and affiliation, and please indicate that your question to which speaker to be addressed to. So now I would like to open the floor. Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Yeonji Kim. I am an evaluation uptake specialist from the Green Climate Fund, GCF. Thank you very much for a very rich, insightful, informative session. Although I am myself from the climate field, things are always evolving and there are new updates. And so it's really hard to kind of wrap our head around some of these newer developments. And so while I'm really impressed to see the significant advancement in this field, carbon pricing, and how different countries have adopted this measure and have been thinking about this direction, as with anything new, like a paradigm shift in market, I think there is a certain struggle. So although everybody, all the speakers have outlined it really clean and neat, I'm kind of curious about the reaction from the industries and firms when these new standards, ETS, carbon pricing mechanisms, they are being introduced. Because even in the phase of struggle, we definitely learn something from that. So especially Japan and South Korea, I think the way that we think about GX as a new growth engine is kind of similar. But has there been any real struggle because even some of these standards are quite new and still evolving? And as the UNFCCC colleague has mentioned, even the PECM, some of the new methodologies are being developed. The methodology development is being prioritized for 2027 and 2028. And so, tell us about your experience interacting with the industries. And I'm pretty sure these are more higher emitting industries, but what about the small and medium-sized firms? Because we definitely need to, go together with them. So any just transition-related capacity building support that your governments have provided, because this new transition is difficult for everyone, including for the major big-size firms. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to take one more question from the floor, if you have any. In the meantime, I'll turn to our speakers. If I understand correctly, that our participants from the GCF are asking that whether you have plans related to just transition under your scheme. So, Mr. Rosque-san.
Thank you so much for the question. So in the case of Japan, we started the GX ETS full operation this year, and actually the overall the industrial sectors the reaction is welcome. But as you mentioned, there are so many struggles and challenges as well. So because the problem of industrial competitiveness, that is the most serious challenge. So actually, in the case of Japan's GX policy, we are strengthening the carbon pricing gradually, not suddenly. Firstly, we are support the industrial sectors, anticipatory and upfront investment, and after that, we will strengthen carbon pricing. So in light of national circumstance, I think that sequencing is very important for practical and implementable carbon pricing. And actually, we will start the paid auction in the ETS. We'll start in 2033. The firstly we will introduce it to the energy sector. So that's why. It is. I think yes, it is very important. To sequence the policy stages in the ETS and the carbon pricing policy, and also we are we believe there are other factors. So aside from carbon costs, such as energy security and economic growth, they are very important. So that's why we are pursuing to achieve the three most important pillars, including energy security, economic growth, and decarbonization. That is our core concept of the GX policy. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jong-un, as far as I understand, under the KETS, you also have a sort of the program to support small and medium companies, right?
Yes. Like Yeonji pointed out, actually it's Article 6 also, including Article 6 and international credit mechanism is quite very complex and hard to understand even for me. And also I think it's same with the industrial field. But so whenever we meet the industrial field companies or entities to have the mitigation policy together, I think I see their reaction is quite very positive, because I mean now they understand that they have to move toward the carbon neutrality, and also like I told you, we just entered into phase 4 of ETS scheme, and for the ETS for the phase 4, we actually allotted very short of the allowances for the business entities. So now they try to be ready or prepare for the other options, which is the having the credit from the international credit mechanisms. And regarding the SME, a small medium-sized enterprise, of course they are struggling to have the stringent standard, or probably it'll be very hard for them to keep the that kind of standard. So we are trying to support the SME enterprise, like the if he apply for the if they submit the application for the carbon neutrality project, then we support in financial and in kind support. So that's my answer.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing the additional policy measure under the KETS. I just asking that our participants from the private sector who has been engaged in the KETS for a long time. So Gina, if you want to complement that, how private sector has been addressed or respond to the KETS, or how you've been engaged in the policy decision making process. Yeah.
Thank you, Soyoung. Hi, I'm Gina from ECOI. Nice to see you all here. As Soyoung mentioned, we are private sector and also project developer involved in KTS. And I think as the PECM, especially the rule is clear and KTS have started their first phase this year. I think for project developer and as Korean companies are very interested in involving like PACM and also in KTS, as the Korean government have raised their ambition to reduce like GHG emissions. That's why the private sector is very focused on involving new activities to reduce and remove like emissions. And we, from the support from the Korean government, as they are supporting like feasibility study and investment itself, we are very involved in Korean government's Article 6 projects as well. So I think with this support, I think we could like achieve the NDC goals with the support from the Korean companies too. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Gina. And I think that Perma also have some comments to complement that our speaker's intervention.
No, I think I think pretty much it was being covered by our colleagues, and I think one of the reasons why there is more interest, I think, is beyond one. I think people talked about being competitive in the market, and I think most industrial sectors wanted to act. But also there's large, like if you are an export-oriented company, like independent of your size, like for example, you are even coming from small and medium-sized textile industries coming from the global south. When you are export exposed, there is a natural tendency and requirement in order for you to have to adopt decarbonization pathways in those type of countries. So independent of the size, we are seeing one to stay competitive, and the other one is the cross-border impacts that's happening in an export-oriented market is also driving interest in private sector. And also many of the emissions from just point of source emissions, quite a lot of international policies are evolving around product level emissions. And when we talk about product level emissions, it doesn't stay with the direct emissions that happens at the industrial facility or site. So it go much beyond the regular scope 1 emissions and cover up to scope 3 emissions. And in the broader value chain or a supply chain, that if product level emissions are being what has been asked to be complied with in the international market. And again, I'm seeing a larger trend in terms of an uptake from private sector and other industrial actors in the country. And also, I think in general, I think as Tanaka-san said, in terms of staying yourself, in terms of having the non-dependence and more to indigenous source of supply in terms of energy, etc., there's a larger tendency also for decarbonization. But I think I absolutely agree that any transition has to be just and equitable. Otherwise, it doesn't survive. And then the just and equitable transition is not from the sources of energy, but also it should be, it should also have the social component and elements behind that in terms of the transition, in order for that to be competitive and have appetite for private sector or public sectors to undertake an action.
Thank you. And slides 좀 띄워주시겠어요? 네. Thank you very much for your active engagement throughout the session. And please joining me thanking our 4 speakers today with a big applause. Thank you. And I hope also today's discussions has further sparked your interest in carbon pricing and the support available on the SIACA to help us make future REDiCAP dialogues even more engaging and insightful. I would greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to share your feedback. As your feedback truly matters, I kindly invite you to take just 1 minute to complete the survey while you will take a short pause. In the meantime, as a part of our closing, I would like to invite our resident lead from the RCC Asia in the Pacific, Julie Amoros, for her closing remarks. Julie, yeah, you can take the podium.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. And again, thank you very much for being with us here today. I am Julie Amoroso Garbin, as introduced by Soyoung, and I'm leading our Regional Collaboration Center for Asia and the Pacific based in Bangkok. We are covering 36 developing countries in the region, except South Asia, which is covered by our Regional Collaboration Center for Middle East and North Africa and South Asia, which is based in Dubai. So we have 6 collaboration centers. 4 of them are in different parts of the world, but right now you have the 2 centers supporting here today. I am not going to, I will not at all attempt to give you, a summary of what has been discussed, because it has been a very rich discussion, as someone from the audience mentioned it today. And what I can probably perhaps mention is that we know already that, there are many different sort of instruments that are coming up, or that countries are developing depending on their country context. There are these ETS and different hybrid approaches that are aligned with their NDCs and long-term strategies. We also see that there is a strong interest in how domestic systems connect to international carbon markets, especially the Article 6.4 mechanism. And but we also heard that countries wanted to do it carefully and also understand it properly, depending on their domestic circumstances. We also heard that there remains to be challenges. Of course, we've seen that from the presentations coming from the countries. But we also know that there can be solutions to that. And I think it's important to hear, again, the discussion here today, that, some countries are actually doing it. And these kind of exchanges provide that platform to actually, hear from other countries with similar contexts and circumstances, how they are doing it and how it might be potentially possible for your country as well. I'm not gonna take long, but maybe just to reiterate that, as what Soyoung and Perumal had already mentioned, we are implementing the SIACA support. From the RCC perspective, we are in the region and we are hoping to engage more countries in terms of developing domestic carbon pricing instruments. And we can work with countries on the technical side. It could be on the different components of the work, either baselines, identifying the feasibility of what potential carbon pricing instruments might be applicable for your country context. We can also provide clinics, again, in terms of unpacking the different technical components of the work. And we have dedicated Article 6 experts in our region who will be able to support countries on this. And lastly, as Soyoung mentioned, we will continue to have this regional platform where, again, we leverage on the expertise of the region, but at the same time of the different experts from Bonn who has the technical knowledge on the different infrastructure. With that, again, thank you very much for lending your time with us this morning, and I wish you a very good day.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to joining us today. If you don't mind, before we head into the coffee break, we'd love to invite everyone to come forward for a REDiCAP family photo. Please come to the front. 선생님 괜찮으시면 제일 첫 번째 슬라이드로 좀.